Welcome.
It's time for the further adventures of Indiana Jones.
Some of the greatest adventures of my life are sitting in this museum.
Big deal.
Pack your bag, grab your passport, and prepare to go globetrotting with Marvel Comics' classic four-color adventures of Indiana Jones.
Oh, your teacher.
Part-time.
Mr. Henry Jones, Jr. of Princeton, New Jersey.
I like Indiana.
We named the dog Indiana.
Now, what shall we talk about?
Welcome, IndyCast listeners, to the further adventures of Indiana Jones. I'm Joe Stuber, and joining me for our breakdown, finally, of issue number 3 is Keith Voss. Keith, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Joe. Hello, further fans. I'm doing pretty good. You guys finally ready to review issue number 3?
Feels like it's been forever since we could get to this thing, but yeah, we had some great stuff in the meantime. We had a few interviews talking about it, leading up to it, but now we want to get into the issue itself. Issue number 3. So, Keith, why don't you go ahead and give us a breakdown on the issue's creators?
That's the further adventures of Indiana Jones, issue number 3, The Devil's Cradle, with a cover date of March 1983. The cover was by Richard Howell and Armando Ghul. We have a little bit more information on that a little later. The script was by Denny O'Neil, pencils by Gene Day and Richard Howell, inks by Mel Candido and Danny Bulanati, colors by Bob Sharon, and letters by Janice Chang.
What'd you think of that cover?
You know, it's a good cover. It starts to get Indy into more of the action-y type covers.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. It was missing for the first couple of issues. We had sort of a standard issue number 1, and then he was just, he was tied up and he was chained up in issue number 2 cover.
Exactly. Now we got him driving through, a barbed wire fence in a Jeep. The only thing I gotta say I don't like about this cover is Indy's look of, like, fear. Like, he's got this, like, look on his face. I would have liked to have seen a more, like, no pun intended, driven, determined Indy driving through that fence, like in the truck chasing Raiders.
Yeah, it's a little panicky look on his face, which is fine on the soldiers because they're about to get run over by a Jeep. But exactly. Yeah, Indy's in charge there. He should look a little bit more in charge. And you mentioned an interesting fact about the cover I hadn't realized before, because my cover, the bottom of it is cut off, where Richard Howell's name, and I noticed Howell and the ampersand there, but I never really thought to pursue that until you had the omnibus, the list of credits, and there's a little bit of a helping hand in there.
That's right. The reprinted cover in the omnibus is also cut off, but the extra credit, Armando Ghul, it is on my original issue, the one with the Spider-Man in the corner. You can see the name on the bottom. It says Howell and Armando on the bottom. And yeah, that's something I never knew about either, that there were two artists on this cover.
Yeah, so we shot Mr. Ghul an email, waiting to hear back about that. All right, the issue itself. Let's get into the plot.
There's our girl again.
There she is. All right. Yeah, spoilers ahead, so if you want to read it ahead of time, just push pause, go ahead and read it, and then we'll get into the issue itself.
Or better yet, read it along with us.
And it sounds like there's a storm brewing for Indy.
Yeah, that's right. The splash page, when you open it up, you see Indy, the parachute's open, he just jumped from the plane, the icons, Edith and Jerry heading over the ocean, but now it's the middle of a storm. And I know a lot of people that I've talked to about this issue have a big problem, like, oh, now suddenly Indy's in the middle of the storm, where the end of issue number 2, it was kind of clear skies. But if you go back and you read the last... The dialogue box, it does mention that there is a distant grumble of thunder and the whistle of a sudden chilling wind. So, I mean, this is the world of Indiana Jones. Things get a little creepy and strange, and things do tend to change from moment to moment.
Always something weird's going to happen at any given moment. So, yeah, that's not unnatural.
Exactly. And it's definitely setting the mood for what's to come. I mean, this is one of the stranger issues, let's face it. So, a storm appearing out in the middle of nowhere isn't the strangest thing that this issue is going to provide for us.
No,
for sure.
But a very familiar sound to Indy, gunfire, as he's parachuting in, and he kind of wonders to himself whether or not it would have been safer to stay on the plane. I don't know if it would have been, because that plane was not going to where it was intended to go.
Yeah, and actually, where do you think just a quick side note here, where do you think that plane was heading?
We talked a little bit about that before we started recording, and I have no idea. I don't think that was mentioned in issue number 2.
No, it wasn't.
They were headed out of Idlewild Airport, which now is JFK Airport, so they're headed out. But it looks like things got turned around a little bit, and Indy is heading into a wooded area, so probably they're got sidetracked to somewhere along the East Coast of the United States.
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe, we talked about this before we started recording. We're thinking maybe Virginia, parachuting into the mountains of Virginia or something, Yeah,
that was my first thought, because he hears the gunfire, he parachutes into these mountains, and then he kind of runs into these, Denny O'Neil's not going to endear himself to any Southern listeners or Southern readers here.
That's for sure.
Because he really makes these guys out to be some Southern yokels, but... some of the hang 'em, dang yous, and it's odd. But he's obviously in the South. He's going in because he parachutes straight into a lynch mob.
That's right.
Go in. So that was one thing I just did a little bit of quick research, and could have been after Charles Lynch from the late 1700s. Said he was an American militiaman and justice of the peace, who had summary extra-legal trials and whippings of supposed Tory sympathizers in Virginia during the American Revolution. And it's possible his brother John Lynch had founded Lynchburg. Do we have any historians out there listening could confirm any of these things for us? But it seems to be Virginia. I'm guessing that's where he parachuted into.
Like we mentioned before, Indy hears gunfire. He lands. He sees this lynch mob about to hang this young man, and Indy's reactions are very interesting to what he's seeing. He even says it himself. This should be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I can't even go interesting. It's just wrong.
From it and make the victim famous. Like he doesn't even think about in the first moment trying to help this poor guy.
No, it's just bad. He was just like this observer, this teacher, this archaeologist, and he's going to do a study on or something, but. Within a panel or two, he becomes Indy again and realizes, no, I've got to save this guy. You can't have a lynching, I can't be witness to that.
It's interesting stuff.
What do you think about those panels? We talked about Gene Day a lot over the last few segments. Unfortunately, he only did the first 11 pages of this issue, but really those panels, I love how he's got the vertical panel with Indy parachuting in. Then we've got the horizontal panels, but they're just running down the side, and it really, I think, increases the drama and the tension of what's
Absolutely.
going on.
It flows really nicely. I just love the way it's laid out. I think it's great. And Gene Day's likeness of Harrison Ford is, I think, almost second to none.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, it's excellent. He's got Indy in the rainstorm, the look, just everything. Looks exactly like Harrison Ford, so really good job by Gene Day on that.
Yeah, Indy decides to get involved. It's something he has to do, and he snaps that whip. He gets
violent
involved.
Indy though, isn't it? I mean, he says,
gets pretty violent.
If any of you so much as twitches an eyebrow, it'll be raining on your brains.
Yeah,
okay.
But the thing is, I can see Indy saying that.
I guess, yeah. I mean,
in those moments, in those pretty intense moments, and he's got the gun out. He can be pretty intimidating.
He did toss a guy through a window in Raiders and ran over him with a truck. So,
exactly. So definitely not beyond Indy, that's for sure.
But he's also a forgetful Indy.
Forgets to take away the guns. What was he thinking? Or
I don't know.
Wasn't he thinking?
Don't leave a lynch mob with all of their guns too. I mean, you really want to. But anyway, because of that, he's got to take off. They're after him again.
Yeah, he escapes with his young new friend that he's just rescued, and they see something peculiar. They see an overturned army truck.
Yeah, like right in the middle of everything, and
which is also very.
The kid mentions about the soldiers, the army soldiers, not wanting his grandfather to make his elixir. Which kind of starts the boulder rolling with this one. Gets our plot going with this because Indy's kind of wondering, what elixir? So there's this elixir of immortality.
That's right.
That sort of drives our story in this one.
Yeah, Indy doesn't seem to really be too sure that this really is what it is, and I have to kind of agree with him. But we'll get to that a little bit more later. There's an introduction to a character as Indy and his friend make, who's never named, by the way. The grandson is never named.
No.
As they make their escape, they run into Bulldog Hannigan.
Colonel Bulldog Hannigan. Yeah, what'd you think of him?
Oof. When I first read the book, or when I first reread the book, he reminded me of someone. I couldn't put my finger on it.
Yeah, mine right off the bat, I thought of a combination of Teddy Roosevelt and Yosemite Sam.
I'm the hootin'est, tootin'est, shootin'est, bobtail wildcat in the West.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yosemite Sam. That, I mean, just the way he says the name, and then when I think of Yosemite Sam and I reread his lines, you know,
Yeah.
My name ain't Bulldog Hannigan, Colonel Bulldog Hannigan. You know,
So those are the rootin',
leanest,
tootin',
meanest,
shootin'est.
rootinest, tootinest sharpshooter. You know, I
Yeah.
totally can see that.
And
Absolutely.
does that. He has his soldiers to start opening fire on Indy again. So, again, Indy's dodging bullets. He and the unnamed grandson, go running off through the mountains of Virginia. For lack of a better state, we'll go with that. And they stumble across something very familiar, which should be familiar to Indy, although the writers didn't know it at this point. But with the prequel of Temple of Doom, we've got a rope bridge.
Head for the bridge, go!
They found themselves facing a narrow rope footbridge, stretching precariously across the treacherous rocky gorge to the opposite cliff.
Yes, a little bit more foreshadowing by Louise Jones.
Yeah,
What do
we
you think?
talked about that. How Louise and Walt sort of came up with some ideas for Return of the Jedi. Couldn't use them in the Star Wars comic book. They didn't know why, but they kind of assumed that when they came up with another Death Star, that George Lucas was going to use another Death Star in Return of the Jedi. So I was kind of wondering the same thing: did they come across?
Did they let them do this? Yeah,
the Temple of Lucasfilm obviously allowed it. So if they had it, probably wasn't in the script at this point. When they were writing the movie, but yeah, it's very similar to Temple of Doom when they go crossing the rope bridge here.
Yeah, and he doesn't seem to like being on it very much, which is an odd contrast to what we see in the film. He says to the grandson, "Believe me, I won't stay on this thing a second longer than I have to." And we see Indy in Temple of Doom just like dart across that bridge, and he doesn't really have a choice. He's surrounded by Thuggee, but he seems to maybe not be so happy with being on this rope bridge.
I kind of think that it falls into continuity now, just sort of a retro continuity looking back on it now because of what happened in the Temple of Doom. You know, he really, you know what, I'm done with rope bridges. I really don't want to be on this thing because of what happened. Yeah. And sure enough, what happened in Temple of Doom happens here in the Devil's Cradle.
Maybe Indy got the idea in the Devil's Cradle from what happened in Temple of Doom. By the way, the vertical panels which show the rope bridge falling and Indy and the grandson, I mean, are just fantastic.
Great choice by Gene Day again. Yep.
Absolutely. It just totally brings such a dramatic element to the story. I love it.
I wish he had done some more issues. I just wish he could have lived to not only do more series, but just do more issues of Indiana Jones. That would have been excellent.
Would have brought so much more to it. But what I thought was funny was that the lynch mob says, we'll just cut the bridge. We don't want to waste a bullet. After they cut the bridge and Indy and grandson are still hanging on, then they just open fire again. Like, it's no problem. Why don't you just shoot him? I mean, Indy would be dead then and we wouldn't have any more stories, but, it just doesn't make much sense. And it shows that the guys chasing them aren't the smartest.
No, they weren't the brightest villains Indy's ever come across. But they make it across. They climb up the rope bridge, use it as a ladder, and before we know it, we're in the Devil's Cradle.
That's right, and a great piece of artwork there. Below what is known as the Devil's Cradle, you see Indy and the grandson, and then there's the Devil's Cradle with the storm in the background. It looks great.
Yeah, it kind of looks like though the Bean in Chicago, the artwork. It's like a stone version of the Bean in Chicago, but yeah, it's prominent. I mean, it's sitting right there on the top of the mountain. And
more great Ford likenesses throughout. I mean, throughout this whole thing, it's just that the art really was well done in this issue.
Yeah,
I can't stress that enough.
And the grandson takes Indy to a cave where we meet Prospero.
Wait, did you say Ross Perot?
Ross Perot.
Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish?
Can I finish?
Can I finish? No, it would have actually been cool if he had met Ross Perot. But no, he meets Prospero. We talked about this with Denny O'Neil. He enjoys bringing in things from outside sources, especially Shakespeare. So we've got a reference to Shakespeare's Tempest with Prospero here. And something you picked up on that we were talking about before, it reminded you of another character from Denny O'Neil.
Yes, and that would be Ra's al Ghul.
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of similarities here. Lazarus Pit, Elixir of Immortality. You know, there's a lot of similarities here.
Yeah, there's this sort of spring that's coming in there. There's water that's coming in, and a spring or a fountain.
He's
or
like building this fire in there, and there's all kinds of like weird stuff on the wall. And like,
so once you said that, it reminded me a lot of the Lazarus Pit. Basically, here's our expositional dialogue. Indy gets some background on what's going on here, and it turns out this Prospero claims to be 400 years old. He claims his grandson is 200 years old. They kind of go from, cave to cave here, or spring to spring, trying to find this water with these special properties where they can make this elixir. He came across this particular cave in spring 3 months earlier.
Right.
But he's got an issue. He needs more time, and there's something that comes up here that he's not too happy about.
Yeah, the soldiers are getting in his way, and he's trying to figure out a way to get rid of the soldiers, and the Devil's Cradle is going to help him out with that.
Yeah, because the soldiers built their camp right at the base of this mountain.
It's a pretty popular area,
I guess, but their
lynch
concern
mob,
is that
soldiers, old 400-year-old crazy Shakespearean men.
You know nuts. He's crazy.
Well, their concern is that this rock's going to come tumbling down. I mean, why would you put your camp there then if that's the problem? So again, the soldiers aren't that bright either. So. But Prospero, I don't know if you got the same thing, but he's kind of a jerk.
Well, the jerk store called. They're running out of you.
Yeah, he's totally a jerk, but I mean...
Not big on his grandson. I mean, he just, one insult after another, too, to his grandson.
Yeah. I mean, just talking about Prospero for a moment, I don't know, do you think he's really 400 years old? My whole take on this character is that he's crazy. He's just crazy.
Yeah, I think he is a crazy old coot. Just sort of comes up, but yeah, I mean he's crotchety too. I mean he's calling his grandson a dullard and adult, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he starts speaking an Asian language to Indy, and Indy's kind of like, "What? Wait, what?"
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, "Oh, I forgot what country I was in."
Sometimes which century?
I forget what century I'm in. Yeah, and it's just like, but that said, somehow that army truck got turned over.
Yeah. It did.
So I don't know.
Which we'll get to a little later once we start talking about the elixir.
Yeah. Well, but there's no doubt about that something's going on there because he is freakishly strong.
Yeah, and he actually kicks Indy's butt.
Yeah, he does.
Kicks Indy's butt all over that cave.
Indy decides to throw down with him because he's not going to let him take the soldiers' camp out. He's just not going to stand by and let that happen. But... yeah, Indy gets a couple of punches in, but that's about it. Tries to break the whip out and...
doesn't even phase him. Indy punches Prospero directly in the face.
Yeah,
and it doesn't even phase him.
No.
And we've seen what Indy's punches can do in the films.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of when he goes up against the German mechanic. He's throwing haymakers and the guy just stands there. So, but this is supposed to be an elderly man. And takes the punches. Indy pulls the whip out and tries to strangle him with it. And he just
even
turns
pulls
it
his
against
gun
him.
at him. He even pulls his gun at one point, and says, "All right, you know what? You've given me no choice." But at that point, Prospero just tosses him around, tosses Indy into the fountain. Indy gets a mouthful of that elixir, quote unquote. I use that term loosely because I still, me personally, I just don't believe it is what Prospero says it is.
Yeah, Prospero falls right into Indy's trap, right? I guess Indy was going to let him punch his face about 1 million times, toss him around like a rag doll, throw him into this elixir so he could get the advantage. So, I mean, Indy believes it on some level.
Right.
Because, when a 400-year-old man or a supposed 400-year-old man starts taking you down, maybe he thinks there's something to it. So Indy wants a mouthful of this stuff.
Exactly. And Indy wakes up. Indy gets knocked out when he gets thrown into the fountain. He wakes up tied to the Devil's Cradle.
Yeah, we're into Richard Howell's pencils now. We interviewed him a couple of segments ago. And, I never noticed before as I was reading it back when I was a kid that there was a change in artists here.
Same here.
You can see it now. You can see it now. But there are similarities to the art, and I think both are amazing because I think Richard mentioned that his pencils were changed around a bit as well. But for the issue, I think it works. I think it works as a whole. But yeah, we've got Indy tied up to the Devil's Cradle here, and he's mentioning Prospero says that he worships life. He would never take a life. But Indy's like, well, why do you have me tied to this rock and you're going to blow it up now? With all this dynamite that you stole, this kegged thunder that you stole from the soldiers.
I love Indy's comment about, I got some philosophy professors that would,
be interested in that kind of logic.
Philosophy professors back at the university, you know what I mean? It's it's definitely interesting.
And of course, go ahead.
Prospero goes from wearing his members only jacket to a robe very similar to what Belloc wore.
Yeah, he's got a nice wardrobe back at that cave.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got, but yeah. So it kind of reminded me of Belloc as well. Although Belloc hung around to make sure Prospero and his grandson they don't. They pull the old cliche of we'll monologue a little bit and then we're going to take off.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing. I can't believe it.
And they have the dynamite that they stole from the army truck underneath the Devil's Cradle. Indy's tied up, but realizes that he can snap those ropes right off. Is it the elixir?
Super strength Indy from the elixir?
No, it's the grandson.
Look, he saved him from a lynch mob. I mean, the guy felt bad. Indy saved him from a lynch mob. Yeah, he's going to help him out, so he cuts the rope.
Of course.
Yeah. So now Indy's kind of like, the skeptical Indy kind of comes back and he's like, all right. There's, maybe not so much.
Exactly. I mean, it was a long burning fuse too to amp up the tension. I mean, I guess also Prospero and his grandson had to get away. They wanted to get away far enough so that the explosion wouldn't hurt them. But I mean, that's a really long fuse. I mean, look at that.
It was too. And as Indy's kind of like figuring out that it's not the elixir, we kind of we do get an idea of what it tastes like though.
That's right.
Grape knee-high in soap. Do you think Denny O'Neil was a fan of MASH and Corporal Radar Riley?
Yeah, it certainly looks like that.
So yeah,
yummy.
Grape knee-high in soap. But yeah, so Indy tosses the kegged thunder and in hopes that the soldiers will become aware of it, and they do, but that plan kind of backfires.
Yeah, they show up and Hannigan.
Colonel Bulldog Hannigan.
Colonel Bulldog Hannigan shows up and arrests Indy, calls him a traitor, knocks him out, hits him on the back of the head, and he's off to prison.
Yeah, well, at first he says shoot him.
Yeah.
So it's like, really? Like, okay, 1936 Virginia, we've got lynch mobs, we've got, army colonels just taking him out in the woods and shooting. What's going on?
Throwing him into the clink there.
Yeah, not much of a justice system there, but yeah, one of the soldiers does talk him into it and say, you know what, we should probably just put him in jail.
Yeah. So definitely that is a little Yosemite Sam coming out of him there.
Yeah, the rootin' and shooting.
Surprised he wasn't taking out his guns and shooting them up in the air,
It's one more panel would have had that.
The unseen, that's the director's cut version of this issue.
But give Prospero credit. He's back at it again. He's determined to take this rock out and to take this camp out.
That's right. He wants that elixir.
He needs that spring. He needs a couple more months because he talks to his grandson and mentions that he needs 3 more months. 6 months is what they need to distill this elixir. Do you think they're moonshiners? So they find
another source, which is interesting.
Yeah, but do you think they're moonshiners? I mean,
they may be running moonshine. That's possible. I mean, and they may be just so completely drunk.
Yeah,
that
they're in the hills of Virginia.
Years old.
We've got barrels of stuff.
That's quite a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about they need time to distill things. So, you know what? I'm wondering if they're moonshiners. So
yeah, I mean, it may be so. It may be so.
Fountain of Youth, moonshine, one or the other.
Some people, it's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So Indy's in jail. Bulldog's kind of got him where he wants him. But then Bulldog does the same thing Prospero does, monologues a little bit, and he walks away.
Yeah, and Indy's able to get out. But, the funny thing is, when he's monologuing with Indy, Bulldog wants to know what Indy's name is. Indy throws out the Smith. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, he does. So we finally get an Indiana Smith.
Name of Indy.
Maybe he goes with John Smith, but he starts off with Indy. Okay, so we do kind of get an Indiana Smith reference in there.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. That was a nice little touch. I don't know if it was on purpose, but definitely a nice touch.
No, and then trivia experts, the Trivia Brotherhood here, are going to go crazy with these next couple panels because Indy takes the belt, but he doesn't have his web belt on. He's got the gun belt. That he uses. So, wouldn't you think Bulldog would have taken that belt off with the gun in the holster? But anyway,
Bulldog seems a little like not so detail oriented there. Just throw him in jail. He just wanted to shoot him. Just why, So why strip him of
there?
Yeah.
But we interviewed Richard Howell, and he mentioned that look, this was a couple days he had to do the artwork on this. So
exactly.
Some of the details are going to get lost. But years later, we can we can get into the trivial aspects of it. But he kind of uses the belt, grabs the keys, lets himself out, and he can do so because the soldiers are distracted a little bit.
That's right. They are distracted. They're telling some stories.
Keith, what would those stories be about?
Lady and the Lime Jello. I mean,
don't know what that is.
I mean, that's one question we forgot to ask Denny O'Neil.
I'm not even sure Denny would have remembered that.
Yeah.
Like, where did you get sailors and the lady with lime jello? Well, hey, I'd be distracted by that story too. So
we're here to celebrate a different way to eat Jello gelatin. We've got jigglers.
Exactly.
Indy grabs the Jeep and this cannon, which turns out to be, wow. I mean, maybe the elixir was poured on the cannon too, because this is
it's a super cannon. It's
super cannon.
Crazy.
Yeah.
As Andy steals the Jeep, he's pulling away. He's getting shot out, which is reminiscent of the cover. It's not exactly the same, but it's reminiscent. And then he says once again, he's making it up as he goes along. Is the joke getting old at this point, or what?
The joke's getting old for me. 3 issues in, I think all 3 issues have it.
All 3 issues have it.
Yeah. Okay. We get it. He's making up as he goes along. So let's move on.
yeah. It's time to coin another phrase. I think.
Let's get something else going here. Maybe the new writing team coming in will be able to figure out something for us. But Indy takes off with this super cannon, heads on up, and you know what? Now he's going to take out the Devil's Cradle.
That's right. But Indy also gets involved with the lynch mob again, and they're back with more of their yokalisms.
He's a creamy now.
Yeah, and we catch him now for sure. I mean, it's a little over the top, but it is what it is.
Oh, poor Southern readers. Yeah, But Indy heads on up and loads a shell into this cannon, and man, that's got some range on it, doesn't it?
It sure does. I mean, at first, I wasn't even sure how far the distance was. You take a look at the book. Indy loads it up. This is the aiming device. He shoots it. Boom! It hits the Devil's Cradle right on target. There it goes. And then the next page, you see it says that it's 40 miles later and a mile upward. 40 miles. Indy aimed this thing like pretty right on target.
Yeah. All right. All of our weapons experts out there, was there ever a gun that? And we talked about that. Richard Howell had mentioned that it was supposed to be a Gatling gun, and Denny, I don't know if they got the name of the gun right or what it was supposed to be, but it's definitely a cannon.
Yeah.
But are there any guns out there at this time that could shoot that far, 40 miles out and a mile up?
Yeah,
and be dead on target and take out a mountainside.
That's right. Indy was really lucky, or there's something else. Maybe this cannon was the real MacGuffin. It's a magical cannon.
Take the cannon. That's
exactly.
That's worth the money. Forget the elixir, right? Yeah, because the elixir doesn't work. It's grape knee high and soap.
Exactly.
But and Indy kind of realizes that Prospero and his grandson are up there, but I don't think he really cares.
No, he just wants to blow that whole thing away and be done with it.
Yeah. So he takes them out, and hey, well, maybe hopefully they didn't get caught in the blast, but if they did, oh well. And hey, by the way, the lynch mob's back. Yeah,
exactly. And Prospero winds up saving Indy.
Yeah, Indy kind of gets the drop on one of them, but there's a few of them, and he needs a little bit of help.
Did you also get the sense that Indy also doesn't believe Prospero and his grandson, or else he would be a little bit more interested in an elixir of immortality? He kind of lets it go.
Yeah, I think once Indy got a face full of the grape knee high and then just realized that the ropes were cut and he didn't really have extra strength or anything, I think he just kind of realized, look, these guys are crackpots. It's bad moonshine. Look, I just got to get out of here.
And the guy happens to be a Shakespeare fan.
Yeah, a freakishly strong Shakespeare fan, to be sure. But yeah,
well, crazy can equal strong, Joe.
I guess it can. But yeah, Prospero finally helps Indy out, and then they're just kind of off.
Yeah, they seem to be okay, and they seem to be okay to move on. Okay, let's go find the next one, And I guess Prospero turns out to be kind of a good guy after all. A little crazy, but a good guy.
Yeah, I think it could have been a better villain as it went along. Maybe drop a few more hints in there. Maybe the elixir was real or something that Indy could check out later. But you know what? It was ultimately a fill-in issue. They were biding time till the new creative team came on, and I think it's not a bad filler issue. I mean, we've certainly had enough material to talk about.
Yeah, that's right, especially after all the information we found out, the backstory about this issue. Yeah. I mean, this actually turned out to be originally an issue that I wasn't so fond of. I wasn't the biggest fan, but after all this research that we've done on it, after everything we found out, after all the interviews, I really like this issue now.
Yeah, I like it. I almost want more. So, I wish we could find out more about Prospero and his grandson, but we don't. And we're going to be moving on to the next issue, and we get the teaser right at the bottom there, Stonehenge.
Stonehenge, 'tis a magic place where the moon doth rise with a dragon's face. Stonehenge.
Yeah, we're going to be headed to Stonehenge for the next segment, and a new creative team, the creative team of David Michelinie and Ron Frenz. And David Michelinie had a pretty extensive run on the further adventures of Indiana Jones. And we want to make sure we tell our listeners to make sure you join us back here for the next time, our next segment, because we've got a very special surprise in store.
Big surprise for you guys
coming up.
Not only that, but we also have another surprise right now for you guys. How about our next giveaway? Why don't you guys drop us a line at thefurtheradventures@gmail.com with the subject line, The Devil's Cradle. We're going to take all the entries, we're going to put them in the Further Fedora, and one random listener will win a copy of this very issue, issue number 3. Waiting to hear from you guys.
And speaking of emails, let's check out the mailbox.
Mister, get your arm out of that mailbox. I mean now.
Oh, dear me. I haven't had so much trouble delivering a package since the incident in Vienna.
Well, we heard from Mark Shanley, and actually this email has been waiting to be read for quite a while until we reviewed the issue. Mark goes ahead and writes, Dear Keith and Joe, the 3rd issue of The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones is scripted by Denny O'Neil, and it bears one obvious hallmark of his work. O'Neil is a writer who is responsible for the creation of my favorite Batman villain, Ra's al Ghul, and part of the innovative run on Green Lantern from 76 to 89. His work ranks among my favorites, and despite this, I do acknowledge that he can be none too subtle when making a cultural reference. He named the pit that regenerates Ra's al Ghul a Lazarus Pit, and during the Green Lantern run, the social issues of the day were explored in the medium of comics. In the case of The Devil's Cradle, he makes allusions to Shakespeare's The Tempest and Wagner's Ring Cycle. Prospero is the name of the magician in The Tempest. Although we never find out the name of the grandson of Prospero, their interactions remind me of those between Mime and Siegfried in Siegfried. If Illustrated Adventure has a name, it must be Indiana Jones. Thanks a lot, Mark. We really appreciate it. And as you just heard from everything that we just reviewed on this issue, we also make those same comparisons to Ra's al Ghul and the Lazarus Pit with Prospero and the Elixir.
I was glad Mark talked about the Green Lantern, too, because we talked about that with Denny in his interview, so we got a little bit of background on that. And, those are all elements that he brings into his writing, and we benefit from it because it just has us going back and doing research on things, too, to find out those things. Just brings a depth to the character that I think people in general don't get from comic books. They're not just funny books.
Yeah, and we appreciate listeners like Mark getting in touch with us and sharing their thoughts. And if you guys want to get in touch with us, there are quite a few ways. You can get in touch with us on the Further Adventures Facebook page, or you can email us at thefurtheradventures@gmail.com.
Oh, okay, that's it for the day then.
Well, as Indy says, that's all the time we have for today. I'm glad we finally got to our issue number 3 review. Great issue. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Enjoying it more and more with every read and with every bit of information that we find out.
Yeah, and looking forward to the new creative team coming on to the book and that very special surprise we have for our listeners on the next segment. And also make sure you email us at thefurtheradventures@gmail.com with the subject line, The Devil's Cradle, because one of you listeners is going to get issue number 3. And we'll catch everyone back here next time on The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.